What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 1 of the Dawg Pound Discussions. And I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there at home and you're saying, man, how did this dude get Bigfoot on for an interview? That is not Bigfoot. That is Tony Battaglio. How are you doing, Tony?
What's up? Yeah, I'm not Bigfoot. Derek thinks he's funny. I don't know. That's all. That's the only thing I got about that. But what's up? Welcome to Dawg Pound Discussions, brand new podcast. College football dogs, college football media network. We're here. Let's get this started. Derek, I'm excited. Anything you want to jump right into?
Yeah, so we got some news. Combine is going on right now. There's going to be a lot of news with that, so we will be covering that in the future. But for today, Andrew Berry had his press conference. And historically, we know Tony, he says nothing, right? None of these GMs really say anything. But there are a couple things that Andrew Berry talked about, starting off with something that the Browns did last year, that they're going to do again this year. Personally, I think it's a good idea. I think it helped the team a lot, as far as just growing and becoming a unit. And that's, hey, we're going back to Greenbrier and we're taking the Vikings there for a joint practice. So what do you think about that?
I love it. It was a great team bonding experience from the way all the players talked last season. It's good to kind of get out of the big city, get away from your family, your friends, escape the noise, get some alone time with your team, get some work in. Seemed like it was successful considering the season that we had, so I'm all for it. And I love the idea of having the joint practices, especially with an NFC team that we likely won't see unless miraculously Minnesota makes it to the Super Bowl, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. But yeah, I love it. I love the off-site training camp. Change of scenery is always good when it comes to getting your mind right, getting the work in, avoiding the distractions. It's going to be great for the team again.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too, the Vikings GM, I totally forget his name, but he was with the Browns. So that open relationship with Minnesota makes a ton of sense. And I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be good. Building that team camaraderie is obviously important. So
yes.
So yeah, we're doing that again. So good with
that. Let's hope this year one thing they do focus on is maybe some physical therapy and putting more work into the training room, because as you've seen last year, we dealt with so many injuries and it definitely hurt us by the time that wild card game came around. We were a shell of a team, and it's something that we have to avoid this year if we want to be successful. So let's hope that these players get some extra work, getting taped up in the trainer's room, less muscle injuries, less broken bones, this, that. Hopefully no one, rips Nick Chubb's leg in half again, but that's just one of the main points of this last season that hurt us was the ridiculous amount of injuries, the offensive line, the running back room, the quarterback room. Like, we were just so beat up by the time that Houston game came around.
Yeah, and Tony, you know what would help with those soft tissue injuries? No, we're not going to talk about it. Speaking of injuries,
we can't. Redacted. It's redacted.
Speaking of injuries, Andrew Berry talked about it. He says he's not worried about the injuries on the offensive line. Expects them to be ready for the season. He said he's not really concerned about injuries in general. He says that's just football. Very, very much a GM answer there. But Tony, I don't know about you. I got to disagree a little bit. I'm not overly concerned as far as the injury front, but it's one thing if it's one or two, but half the damn team was injured. So it's hard to say you're not concerned.
Yeah, I think that's just, not in this case, it wouldn't be coach speak, but coach speak from a GM perspective, just saying what you have to say in front of the media. You definitely have to be worried about guys that, especially when it's guys that are continuously getting injured and cannot stay healthy. Yes, one injury is one thing, but when it becomes a continuality problem to the same guy, the same group, or the same, whatever, it's a problem. And I think that we certainly need to worry about it a little bit more than, Andrew Berry is letting on in his press conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me. Like, it's so hard to pinpoint why. Like, Jack Conklin's hurt every year. Like, I don't think that's a Browns issue. But, like, I don't know. When it comes to just how many guys on this team were injured off and on the injury report, out for the year, it's insane. So something needs to change. I'm not going to say exactly what, but something they're doing has to be adjusted in order to try to hinder this from happening again next year. But regardless, Andrew Berry says he's not concerned. The biggest takeaway from the press conference, you could argue, the most important one, Deshaun Watson. Andrew Berry talked about Deshaun Watson. He said he's going to start throwing again next month. He's making good progress in recovery. Tony, I've seen some pictures of Deshaun this offseason, and the sling brought back bad memories. And I was not exactly, I didn't feel great seeing that. But Andrew Berry comes out today. Again, he's going to start throwing next month. Says he's doing good so far. What's your take on that?
Well, simply put, the health of Deshaun Watson is most likely going to determine how our season is going to go. You know, we paid him all this money and we've gotten one half of good football out of him so far. And that's something that absolutely has to change, especially with the way his contract is going to kick in over the next few seasons. Watson has to stay healthy. He has to produce. And yes, I know he was showing signs of producing until he got hurt. But I'm sorry, I need more than a half of football out of consistent play from Deshaun to buy in and be like, okay, you know, I'm okay with this. Let Deshaun loose. Let him rip the ball. We're good. But again, yeah, has to stay healthy. He's another guy that needs to eliminate the outside noise because I think a lot of people in Deshaun's life, like his camp and everything else, they're yes men personally.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to eliminate that noise. He needs to focus on playing football. He needs to stay out of the massage parlors. He needs to just where I seen your face, Derek. He needs to put in the work at the end of the day. I want Deshaun to succeed. I'm not a Deshaun Watson hater. I love the fact that he's here putting on a Cleveland Browns uniform each and every week. I want him to be successful because I want this team to be successful. And the success of this team rides on the shoulder of four, and he has to stay healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big thing too, Deshaun Watson's played 12 games in 2 seasons. So, you know, everybody online talking about how much of a mistake the Browns made, people saying that it's worse than the Russell Wilson trade and all those sorts of things. Honestly, there is an argument to be made, yes, but at the end of the day, it's not about his play on the field. It's about having him on the field is the number one priority of the offseason. So, speaking of Deshaun Watson, real fast, talked about the combine. Andrew Berry mentioned that he doesn't care about the age of prospects, and historically, we have discovered that that is not true. So I'm just gonna mark that up as bullshit. Sorry for the cussing, but you know it is what it is. But moving on real fast here, salary cap, something we need to address real fast. He expects to have not a huge impact as far as like the limitations go. The Browns have, and we'll talk about it here shortly, a lot that they're going to have to figure out with the salary cap. Andrew Berry doesn't see it as a problem. Tony, what say you?
Well, touching back to the earlier point, yes, that is bullshit. Everything Barry said about the ages and career history, because we've seen the guys they've brought in. Like, he definitely cares. And then, yeah, salary cap could be a problem, but as we've seen in the past, this team loves to restructure contracts. Probably something that's going to happen throughout the upcoming free agency period and the offseason. We're going to get some restructures. We're going to hopefully bring some game changers in, and hopefully we can make it work with the numbers. If not, there is a potential trade that could happen or two that may be needed, but we'll figure it out. We figure it out every year. There's got to be a formula that will get down pat solved for this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're gonna do what they do regardless. So, but with that being said, Another big topic of the day, the least shocking thing you've ever heard in your life. Brown's Twitter is ablaze, because of something so stupid, right? Again, where the Super Bowl's over, the season's over, we are in pissing distance of the draft, combine's going on, free agency's coming up, and people are talking about cut candidates. The one name that has unfortunately been brought up, and Tony, I'm going to let you go first on this, Nick Chubb. People are talking about the possibility of Nick Chubb being cut. What do you have to say?
There is no way Nick Chubb is going to be cut from this football team. I don't know who started the rumor. I don't know who's facilitating the rumor for clicks, but if they cut Nick Chubb and you thought January 6th was bad, wait till you see what happens in Cleveland, Ohio. Because the fan base will riot. How do you get rid of one of the greatest players of a generation, possibly the greatest player to ever put on that uniform since this team returned in the 90s? You can't cut Nick Chubb. You have to find a way to keep him on this roster. He's still serviceable. Like I said, you thought January, I'll double down. You thought January 6th was awful. You cut Nick Chubb, and the facility in Berea is going to be insane. There's just no possible way they can cut Nick Chubb.
No, absolutely. And listen, at the end of the day, this is all fucking bullshit. Like, I'm sorry, but it's all bullshit. Like, the conversation of even a possibility of cutting Nick Chubb, and I should throw this in here first. Some stuff that came out from the Browns. Any conversation's going to stay between him and the front office. Obviously, that's a given. They're doing everything in their power on his recovery. Nothing is definitive about his timeline. They believe he's still a difference maker. Pleased with his run game, or pleased with the run game in his absence, which I find interesting. Lost a lot of the explosive runs without Chubb, and they credit the offensive line and the run scheme for the run game's continued success. Now, there's a lot there. There's a lot of different ways to take that, but first things first, no, the Browns are not cutting Nick Chubb, and if you think the Browns are cutting Nick Chubb, then you're just delusional. I mean, flat out, you're just delusional. Because Tony, I know you weren't there, but I was there for the game where we clinched the playoffs against the Jets, and Nick Chubb came out to smash that guitar. There was a lot of speculation on, is it MGK? Some people thought it was LeBron. I heard Steve Harvey, which was hilarious. I was kind of hoping for him.
I heard Kid Cudi. I heard MGK. Yeah. I heard LeBron. Even though the Lakers were playing that night out in LA, everyone's like, yeah, LeBron's going to skip the Laker game and come smash a guitar. No. I think it had to be Nick Chubb, and they made the right decision. And the reception he got from the fan base and the look of joy on his face, I'm sorry, like I will say it again, you can't cut it. There's no way.
No, and that's exactly what I was about to say. Like that, I've been in that stadium for a couple loud moments, but to see him walk out with put the Batman mask on, like the dude is a one-of-a-kind human being. He's a one-of-a-kind player. He without a doubt is the heart and soul of this team. And listen, I don't care if the Browns and Andrew Berry wants to say that the run game was okay with his absence. It wasn't. It was not at all. And listen, Nick Chubb, he's not going to last forever. This is not a situation where he's going to be forever Cleveland Brown and breaking 60-yard touchdown runs week in and week out. We obviously know that. And I saw on Twitter, Todd Gurley's still in his 20s, and he's not even in the league. So,
no.
Running back position, it's tough. But here's what I will argue. Nick Chubb went through the same thing at Georgia. Just absolutely got his knee shredded. Did not look like he was going to be able to come back. And guess what? He came back, and he's the Nick Chubb that we know now. So, yeah, it's a bit of a concern, but I think Nick Chubb's going to be fine. And another thing, too, odds are they're not going to cut him. They're probably going to end up extending him, if anything. That makes the most sense, more so than just cutting him. Because they can save money if they extend him. They can be doing him a favor by ensuring him a job and money at his position. And it just makes too much sense. So, absolutely not. They're not cutting Nick Chubb. All y'all on Twitter can shut the hell up and calm down just because whoever football on Twitter wants to tell you that Nick Chubb's going to get cut and he's a free agent. He's not. He's not. And that's the reality with a lot of these guys.
Like you said about Gurley, yes, the shelf life of an NFL running back is rather short. And Chubb's not going to be here forever, also true. But now's not the time to say your goodbyes. And you want to enjoy football, here's my advice. Stay out of Twitter spaces. Stay off of Twitter. Stop following the stupid accounts with blank football in their name because they're just doing it for clicks. They like when Elon sends them a check every month. That's all they think about is money. No, Nick Chubb's not cut. Nick Chubb may not play much this season or play at all this season, but he will be a Cleveland Brown.
Absolutely. And speaking of how much he will play, touched on it a little bit there when we were talking about possibility of him getting cut, but I think regardless on what ends up happening with Nick Chubb, at least on my side of things, I think for sure the Browns need to add another running back. Another running back, probably number 2, moving Jerome Ford down to 3, because Kareem Hunt's not going to be back. There's just no shot. So, Tony, this free agent class is pretty good, but also there's some guys in this draft, too, that the Browns could snag later that I think is pretty good. But your side of things, is there anybody in particular that you want or a specific play style you think the Browns should add to this running back room?
There's a few, but I want to touch on I'm not quite ready to give up on Jerome Ford as a number 2 yet. Yeah, I want to bring a guy in, but maybe sit him behind Ford for a year. I'm not ready to give up on Jerome. I think he's got promise. But another idea, there's 2 guys I would like us to bring in. One just lifted a national championship, and his play is a lot of the reason why they won that national championship. Derek, boo-hoo, I know your feelings are hurt. It's okay.
No.
And the other is, in my opinion, the best running back in the country, who is very underrated, and he does not get the respect he deserves. And the first guy, obviously, Blake Corum. The second guy, Audric Estime, who met with the Cleveland Browns today. And I may be a little biased saying that I want Audric Estime on this team. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I love him. I watched him play for 2+ years. He runs hard. He runs angry. He'll run you over. He'll juke you out. He'll run by you. He's got all the tools you need to be a successful NFL running back. And I think he'd look great in brown and orange. And maybe a, 1-2 type of package with Jerome Ford if Chubb can't go much this season. I don't know, Derek, what do you think? I'll touch on Estime after you give who do you want?
Yeah, so there's a couple guys that I like, specifically draft-wise. Blake Corum, I hate him because obviously where he went to school, and plus I just think he's a little bit of an asshole personally, but listen, the dude is an unreal running back. He is fantastic. He's only 5'8", 213, but 1,245 rushing yards, averaged almost 5 yards per carry, 27 touchdowns, 84 PFF rush grade. The dude was Michigan, right? And for those of you who know me, I have a very strong opinion on the JJ McCarthy prospect, or as far as him being a prospect. And the majority of my opinion stems from what he didn't do. And what he did do was hand the damn ball off. And half of that, Edwards and Corum were the Michigan Wolverines offense behind that great offensive line. I think Blake Corum could come into Cleveland and just immediately step into a huge role. Yes, I agree with you. I think Jerome Ford needs to be involved, but Corum is the type of running back, regardless of where he goes. I think he comes in. I think he plays at a high level quickly. So he's obviously the number 1. You mentioned Estime. I'll let you get into him, but the couple other guys real fast. Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. I think he's got a lot of promise. Um, he would be somebody that I'd be interested in adding. And at the end of the day, it comes down to where do they want to pick one of these guys? Because the Browns have 2 4th-round picks, 2 5th-round picks, or no, I'm sorry, 2 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks, 2 7th-round picks. We don't have a 4th-round pick, and we have our second, third. So my guess would be the Browns probably use one of the 2 picks they have in the later rounds. Would be my guess. I don't know for sure. But the other guy, Braylon Allen. And for those of you watching at home, can I interest you in a Wisconsin running back? Because they're pretty damn good. they're kind of like the Iowa tight ends. I mean, they keep shelling them out into the NFL and they play at a high level. Braylon Allen's kind of a bigger running back. He's 6'2", 245, average 5.5 yards per carry, or 5.4. But this is a dude that just doesn't go down. I think he would be, especially in the situation you're talking about with Jerome Ford, he would be a great, great combination there. And this is a guy, and we're talking about life after Chubb, the possibility of it, even though it's not happening now, it's not a bad idea to look towards the future. And if the future is Jerome Ford and one of these guys, then that's what it's going to be. But yeah, for me, I really like Braylon Allen. I think he'll be there late. Obvious number one is probably Blake Corum. But I like Estime too. Like you mentioned, he met with the Browns. For the people who don't know a lot about him, let them know. What do you got to say about him?
So to revert back to the Braylon Allen pick, I'd be okay with that. That's my number 2 behind Estime. He's a big 6'2" bruiser running back that will just flatten you. But back to Audric Estime, yes. I've watched this kid. Shouldn't say kid, we're the same age in that. Well, we're not the same age. I'm actually older, which hurts a little bit, honestly. But Audric Estime, yes, I'm old. We're old. 5'11". 5'11", 227. Will run by you, like I said. Flatten you, just run you over 1,300. You're over 1,300 rushing yards, nearly 6.5 yards a carry, 18 touchdowns, excuse me. A force in the Notre Dame backfield behind a top 3 NFL draft pick and Joe Alt at left tackle. I wish for some way the Browns could get him, but that's obviously not possible. But yeah, back to Estime. Hard runner, never quits, never goes down without a fight. He'd look great in the brown and orange colors, almost like somewhat of a Nick Chubb regen, but, a little bit lighter maybe. Maybe not as bullish when he runs, more flashy because he will simply just outrun you, juke you out of your cleats. I could go on for hours about how much I love watching Audric Estime run football because I got to see so much of it and just enjoy it each and every Saturday for over 2 years. And if the Browns brought him in, it'd be so much better than watching him go to like the Kyle Hamilton situation. Mm-hmm. It hurts me watching Kyle Hamilton as a Baltimore Raven. For years, we've had this. Our division rivals will land these impact players, and I have to sit there and be like, wow, I loved that guy last year when he was hitting people in South Bend, and now it's like, damn, stop, go away. But yeah, dude, I would love to bring Audric Estime in.
That is exactly how it was last year. I wanted the Browns to get Trenton Simpson. He goes to Baltimore. I wanted the Browns to get Jordan Battle. He goes to Cincinnati. It's I don't know why. And same thing back a couple years with George Pickens. Now, obviously, we got Martin Emerson, who's been fantastic. But, it just sucks watching the division rivals kind of take the guys you want. But, hey, if you can't have some of the guys that you want, let's talk about the guys we have, who we might not have anymore. This is going to be kind of a free agency preview here. So the Browns have a few guys here that are fascinating as far as should they bring them back? What do their contracts look like? and just kind of how is this all going to play out. So before we talk about some of them individually, just give you the list of guys here. Zadarius Smith, Shelby Harris, Sione Takitaki, Harrison Bryant, Jordan Elliott, Corey Bajorquez, and Anthony Walker Jr. So, Tony, out of that list of guys there, who do you want to come back? Who do you think will end up coming back?
I would take all of them back except for Harrison Bryant. I would let him walk in a heartbeat. Zadarius, never mind. Zadarius Smith, I would bring back on a reduced deal because he could not stay healthy. He was one of those injury bug type of guys. Shelby Harris was solid for us. Taki, absolutely need to bring him back. Harrison Bryant, get the hell out of Cleveland. Jordan Elliott, I could care less. Borges, absolutely need to bring him back, and I would love to have Anthony Walker back. Not a massive free agency class for us in terms of players we could lose, but definitely some key pieces that we would likely need to retain, if for nothing more than extra depth. Because, again, injuries. We'll see how common the injuries are going into next season and see if we need a lot of these guys will likely be big contributors once again if brought back. But they got to stay healthy. They have to actually contribute. But as of right now, I'm okay with bringing everyone back except for Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. Unfortunately, for those of you who do not know, I will go ahead and make myself look like an idiot. I'll just throw this out here. You can make fun of me. It happened. I got to accept it, live with it, and move on. I did at one point bet Harrison Bryant over one reception. So I needed him catch the ball once. And of course he didn't. And yeah. So I agree with you. Harrison Bryant can kiss my ass. Sorry. Don't care if he's here or not. I think the Browns need to, Njoku was great. I still like Jordan Akins. I think he can come back. He's more of a Watson guy. And with Watson being out, I wouldn't mind bringing him back on a cheap deal. But like you mentioned, some of these guys like Bajorquez, you have to bring him back. I feel like that's a must. Jordan Elliott, Shelby Harris, Mo Hurst, those three, I personally think at least two of them need to come back. And with Jordan Elliott being younger, I would be willing to guess that he's gone. So I would give Shelby Harris a 1-year deal. I'd give Mo Hurst a 2 to 3 year deal on a cheap contract. I know he's had his injury problems, but the stated defensive tackle for the Browns, if you can have him secured for a couple years cheap, I think that's valuable. And then the two big ones. So I'll start it off and let me know what you think on this, Tony. But with Zadarius Smith, I was pumped when we got him. I think he was a great addition. I think he had a really good year. Kind of overlooked, to be honest with you. I think he had a really under the radar good season for the Cleveland Browns. And here's the reality. He's up there in age a little bit. I believe he's 32 years old. His market, I don't see it being crazy. I know pass rushers get paid crazy money, but a guy who's older with an injury history, I don't see him getting paid a whole lot. For me personally, if it's cheap, I would bring him back for a year max. If it's cheap. But this is kind of what I want to bounce off of you here. Pause. With bringing back Zadarius Smith, for me personally, I love the depth that we have. Obo Okoronkwo was outstanding this year, and we signed him to be our number 2 opposite of Miles before we got Zadarius Smith. So I would be perfectly fine with him as our number 2 if need be. Alex Wright, a guy who you drafted, who's a raw prospect, needed some work, but he has a lot of God-given talent. He has started popping off, and especially towards the back half of last season, he was looking outstanding. Like, he was looking like he could be special. And then you still have Isaiah McGuire, who you drafted last year, who out of Missouri, who I really like. I really liked him as a prospect. he didn't do a whole lot last year, but, you know, he could prove himself more this year, given the opportunity. Then Isaiah Thomas was on your practice squad, and he's shown flashes. So my question to you, Tony, would be, if you bring back Zadarius Smith, are you kind of hindering the development of some of these young guys?
I mean, we see this with the Cleveland Guardians, for example. We are hoarding middle infield talent and delaying the development of several guys. So in a way, yes, but in a way, no. Because baseball and football, the difference with football is guys are going to need a break. You can rotate guys in 2, 3, 4 plays and be okay. As for Zadarius Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, his deal would be a void. And I believe if we bring him back, we would owe him 11 and a half, just over 11.5 million, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm sure someone on Twitter will correct me if I'm incorrect. But I don't think he's hindering the development of guys like Alex Wright, of guys like Obo, of McGuire, I think he's a good veteran to have in the locker room.
Yeah.
So again, I'm okay if we bring him back. If we let him walk, then so be it. It does free up cap space. I'm kind of impartial on the whole thing. I would prefer he comes back.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird to me because like he's a luxury piece. It would almost be, and I brought this example up a couple of days ago with somebody, but like the Bengals. If the Bengals were to bring back Tyler Boyd, they don't need Tyler Boyd. They really don't. But if he's going to sign cheap, sure, why not? I kind of view it in a similar light, but I don't know. Zadarius Smith is interesting, but the one that I think is the most important out of the guys who are possible free agents, Mary Kay has already reported that the Browns are highly interested and there's mutual interest in him coming back, is Sione Takitaki. I think personally, if I was Andrew Berry, I'm giving him at least 3-year extension, right? This is a guy who was a draft pick in the John Dorsey era, who has progressively gotten better. I think he's played at a high level. He had some injury history, but this past year, I thought he played pretty damn good. And we extended him on a 1-year deal, kind of like, hey, we don't want to get rid of you, but at the same time, we're not ready to commit to you. I don't know about you. I don't know about the people at home. I'm ready. I'm ready to commit to him. I'm ready to give him a piece of this pie that is the cap space and say, hey, we view you as a starting linebacker on this defense, at least for the next 2 to 3 years. What do you think about that?
I love Sione Takitaki, and I agree. The Browns did with him with that contract like I like to do with my girlfriend. A little short term. We'll see how things go.
Gosh.
And maybe I'll keep you on longer if I like you. Sometimes it don't work out, but this time it really did. And according to CBS, if you watch the games this season, he scored a couple touchdowns because their graphics kept messing up.
Yeah.
So I think this offseason, Taki is going to get himself some guapi and get paid. And he's going to continue to be a Cleveland Brown well into the future. And I'm fully on board with that. I'm pretty sure Derek just spit his water everywhere. Please.
You got to give me a second. Hold on. You're an asshole. You know that? You're an asshole. Oh, by the way, this is since this is episode 1, a little bit off topic real fast. Just want to throw that out there. Hey, Tony, you mind throwing your arm up real fast?
Oh, okay. Is this your little get back here? Is this what we're doing? I don't know. Where's my camera at?
Yeah, that's right, people.
I have Derek's logo tattooed on my arm. But there's some backstory. I was at the tattoo parlor. My regular tattoo artist that did all my beautiful tattoos, if you can see them, on my arm here. You can't really see the one I like. There we go. But, her apprentice was in the shop, and she's like, he needs some work. I'll give you a tattoo for $10. I have a really messed up DF on my arm now. So that's the backstory. So yeah. I have officially contributed more money to Derek's life than Derek's own father has with a $10 tattoo.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We're going here.
So not to get off topic, let's get back on topic. How do you feel about Shelby Harris coming in?
Yeah. Okay. I see you. You want to divert? Don't worry. I'll throw it in the chamber for the next time. Don't worry. Shelby Harris. It's hard to get back on topic after that.
Yeah,
Shelby
Harris.
I I like Shelby Harris a lot. I think he was a good addition. Yeah, now you're choking. Wouldn't be the first time. Shelby Harris. Okay. I thought he was a good addition. I liked Mo Hurst better. But as far as a guy that you added, I want to say mid-season, if not start of the season. He was a late addition.
Kind of late. He was definitely late.
Yeah. He played pretty damn good. And, you know, especially given that you're going to ask Ostino to play a bigger role in the middle. I mean, Siaki Ika. I think bringing back a veteran like Shelby Harris is not a bad idea. And plus, I mean, what is he going to get on the open market? He's not going to get anything crazy. Much. And he fits the system. I think that's kind of the biggest thing with this is like, hey, you know, when you have guys who are older, who have bounced around the league a little bit, you know, when you find your spot, you kind of want to stick there. You're not going to want to be on a different team every year. So, you know, if Shelby Harris wants to come back for another year, sure, I'd take him back. Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree completely. No, he was great. For the late season addition that he was, yes, he was amazing. But transitioning to our next guy, Harrison Bryant, pack your damn bags, get the hell off of my football team. I don't ever want to see you in a Browns uniform again. You can't even catch one football when someone bets on you. I mean, come on. What use are you, especially with the rise of David Njoku? And you got Jordan Akins as well.
Harrison Bryant disappointed me more than my father that day. I'll just throw that out there. Before we move on here real fast, I just want to talk about this guy real quick. Jordan Elliott. I mentioned it real fast. I think he is a good player. I think he sucked his first couple years, but he's one of these guys that picked up and got better and actually was pretty useful for the Browns last year, which he hasn't been his entire career. But regardless, he is a free agent. I don't think the Browns are going to bring him back just because I think he's going to cost a little bit too much just because of his age. Now, with him and this next guy I want to talk about real fast, Anthony Walker, I think it's fascinating. Tony, let me ask you a question here. Take a guess, shot in the dark, how old Sione Takitaki is and how old Anthony Walker is.
I would say Takitaki is probably closing in on 30. And Anthony Walker's probably like mid-20s.
I am shocked that you went that direction, but all right. They're the same age. And I thought Taki was way younger, to be honest. So
we probably look pretty unseasoned right now, not even knowing the age of our own players. But
I want to say they're both 29.
They're definitely in their mid to late 20s.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Anything else on the free agents you want to talk about?
Gotta bring Corey Borges back for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bring Anthony Walker back as well. So the Browns have around $2.5 million in cap space right now. Kind of want us to go out and get T. Higgins. Probably a pipe dream, maybe. But who knows? There's speculation. I'd be okay with it. Who would you want to add, really?
Well,
if you had to pick one guy from this class, who you adding to this team?
Well, if I had the freedom to pick, I don't know. I mean, probably Michael Pittman, but I mean, T. Higgins got franchise tagged. Pittman's probably going to get franchise tagged.
You're right.
A lot of these guys
franchise tagged.
A lot of these guys probably ain't going to become available. But we should throw this out here. That 2.4 number, it's going to change. Denzel Ward's contract was already restructured. The Browns are going to have probably between 50 to 60 million by the end of this thing to play with, which sounds crazy. I know. How are they going to do it? Well, guess what? You can take bits and pieces, move it down the road. Some people don't want to do that. But in the modern day NFL, you kind of have to, because these contracts are they're too big. And the cap space is going up too. So
Deshaun's contract has taken a bite out of the salary cap. It's 25% of the league salary cap. But I apologize for my unseasonedness of not remembering T. Higgins' franchise. I don't pay attention to the Cincinnati Bengals. They're our little brother. Speaking of taking bites out of things, Austino, or otherwise known as Siaki Ika, is back with what we're going to call Austino's Brownie Bites.
Oh, whoa! All right. Hot start. My fault. I was told to do a brownie review for this podcast that Tony and Derek are doing. So I got a killer brownie here you can get from your local Gecko. I'm going to unwrap this bitch, take a bite out of it. Thank you guys for the opportunity. I appreciate this. Cheers. Brother. That's a good fucking brownie. Fuck you looking at?
There you go. You're starting from the top here. You ready?
Yeah.
You botched that so bad.
I did.
Jacob, please leave that in.
Count that down.
Okay, anyway. All right, so there is one guy that a lot of people are speculating, and it makes a lot of sense as far as what the Browns have done so far this offseason. Of course, firing Alex Van Pelt, bringing in Ken Dorsey to be the offensive coordinator. There is one guy that a lot of people have kind of attached him to the Cleveland Browns. We know that he's going to be leaving his current team. That has been talked about. He pretty much already put out a letter saying, deuces, I'm out. Thank you. Goodbye. Right. And that guy is Gabe Davis. So, Tony, I'll let you go first. Gabe Davis, what do you think about him? What's kind of your opinion on if we bring him in?
I like him, but I just simply think he's too inconsistent. I feel like he would have a big game, disappear for 5 weeks, have a big game, disappear for 5 weeks, rinse, repeat. He can be a big play threat for the Cleveland Browns if they bring him in, but he would need to very quickly find some consistency and some rhythm with Deshaun. And I don't know how he really feel about being a number 2 again. I mean, he was behind Diggs, arguably behind Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid in turn, if you want to bring tight ends into it, which immediately, you're just trading one for another. Yes, you get your offensive coordinator, but you're behind Amari Cooper, you're behind David Njoku, and you got to fight with guys like Cedric Tillman and David Bell for playing time. Not sure if he would want to do that. Not sure if he's good enough or consistent enough to do that and actually earn his way onto the field. I wouldn't be upset if we brought him in on maybe a 1-year, prove yourself deal, but that is very unlikely. So I'm okay on missing out on the Gabe Davis trade.
Yeah, he does little to nothing for me. And I've been very vocal on the wide receiver room. It pisses me off how, at least in my opinion, I think the Browns have done a piss poor job trying to help Baker, trying to help Deshaun, help their quarterbacks, right? And I'm throwing in Baker because obviously different regime, whatever. But the Odell Beckham trade, you traded a lot to go get Odell Beckham Jr. At the time, obviously, yeah, we were thrilled, but in hindsight's 2020, but it's hey, in my opinion, use your high picks at receiver. And that's kind of my opinion here. Like, I think Gabe Davis is fine. I think he's okay. But he does nothing for me. I don't see him being a high impact guy. And my opinion, regardless of who we bring in, and there's a couple names, Marquise Brown is an option. Obviously T. Higgins was the hope, but like Calvin Ridley could be available, and there's a couple others. But you know, if you bring in one of these guys that isn't like a solidified number 2/1, draft somebody. I'm begging you, Andrew Berry, please draft somebody. Tony knows how much work I've done on the wide receiver position. I have like 30 guys. I know way too much about them. This class is historically good. And I know like that's a popular thing to say is like, oh, this quarterback class is great. This running back class is great. I've done my homework. This receiver class is fantastic. And you know, for me, I'm pushing the narrative. Go get Xavier Worthy. Go get Xavier Worthy. Because you look at the Browns receiver room right now, you have Amari Cooper as your number 1. You're probably going to get another 2 to 3 years probably out of him. Maybe if you're lucky. And then Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, David Bell. That doesn't really do anything for me. I think you're drastically missing something there. For me, I think you need to get a guy. Like, I think Tillman can be a guy, but where's the explosiveness? Where's the speed? Where is that it factor in this receiver room? I think the Browns have to do that. I think even if they go out and get Gabe Davis, Xavier Worthy, Xavier Legette, you know, one of those types of guys who can be a difference maker for you, Jalen Polk, you know, and even if the Browns didn't want to go receiver in the second round, which I hope they do, I'm begging, please pick a receiver. I would be elated.
Yes.
But even if they don't, there's some guys later in the draft that I like too. Javon Baker out of UCF is going to be a monster. Like I'm telling you, he's going to be a good NFL receiver. It's probably a 4th, 5th round pick. So, you know, we can't keep doing this at wide receiver. We just can't. So,
one thing that I will always want for the Browns is I wish we had the ability to go and grab any who off the street like the New England Patriots did for the longest time with Tom Brady. I wish we had a guy like Bill Belichick that could go to the trailer park and pick out Nathaniel Cleary and make him a top wide receiver in the NFL. But that's just, you know, unfortunately, that's not the case. And we continue hitting and swinging and missing on these wide receivers. And eventually, you know, we got to stick one somewhere. It's rough. Even if it's free agency, if it's the draft, if it's a trade, I hope we add another dynamic wide receiver. Something's got to be done. We got to help Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. And that's not to say I don't like the guys we have. I still believe in Cedric
No, they're
Tillman.
great.
Yeah, I still think there's some promise there, but like the Michael Woods of the world, the David Bells of the world, I know there's a lot of people who want to think he's this great receiver and you're waiting for him to break out. You know what he is. I mean, we kind of know what these guys are. So you have to make changes. Everybody wants to talk about $230 million. Everybody wants to talk about the trade. Guess what? Health is the number 1 thing, but number 2 is surrounding him with the best talent you can. And in my opinion, I don't think the Browns have done that. We've tried. Elijah Moore's okay, but I think at this point he's a number 3 at best. So the song and dance of, oh, let's draft a guy in the 4th round and hope he turns out to be great. No, take your high pick, take a guy that you know is proven. Do that. If you don't want to do that, then put your big boy pants on and go trade for somebody you know who is good. We can't keep doing this. So,
you know, when you really want to think about it, the Cleveland Browns wide receiver situation oddly mirrors our quarterback situation where we tried for years to bring in a serviceable quarterback. Even though it's not as important or not as noticeable, we're doing the same thing with wide receivers. I mean, think of it, who's the last wide receiver that we have truly developed? Traded for Amari Cooper, traded for OBJ, traded for Jarvis Landry. It's just been
Josh
Gordon.
Rashard Higgins, maybe.
Higgins was okay.
But
he's not a superstar. We got to go draft a guy that can be serviceable for more than 2-3 seasons. And something has to be done. If Josh Gordon could have laid off the reefer, things would be a lot different right now, but it's just not the case.
Or if he was picked in today's era, nobody would care.
If he's picked this year, no one would give a shit. He could light one up on the field, and they'd be like, "All right, you do you."
Yeah, I'd be a bigger fan. Shit.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Receiver's gonna be. They got to figure something out. But
and the most important thing is got to get help for your quarterback, which brings us to who's going to start at quarterback for the Browns, because you got to get him some help. So you get him a wide receiver, and then you think, okay, is Flacco throwing to him? Is Watson throwing? Is Deshaun's camp over here like, we don't want competition? Is Chops heavy breathing in Andrew Berry's ear, talking about getting Flacco out of here? Or do you bring back the ageless wonder, Joe Flacco? Do you let him compete, give him a training camp to see what happens? He was great at the end of last season until the playoffs came around, and then the wheels fell off. Watson, we've gotten one good half out of Deshaun Watson in the last, year and a half, 2 years. How's he going to look? You got to play them both in the preseason. You have to. You have to figure out what's going on. You got to make sure all the kinks are worked out. You got to make sure we're actually going to have especially Watson, work the kinks out. We don't need another suspension.
My gosh.
But yeah, no. You got to give him a camp. You got to at least training camp, at least a preseason game. You got to do something. You got to push Deshaun to be better. Derek?
So, this is interesting. I personally disagree. And it's not from the standpoint of I don't want Joe Flacco back. I think it causes more issues than it helps, for me personally. Joe Flacco is 38 years old. He's not a part of your future, right? And when you look at the records, Deshaun Watson was 5-1 this past year when he started. Flacco was 4, or maybe I'm reading that wrong. I don't know, but regardless, Deshaun Watson, when he was starting, was winning football games. Joe Flacco, same thing. I think the biggest problem here is not the skill. I mean, Joe Flacco, I think, is fine. Like, if the Browns were to bring him back, I think that's fine. But here's the reality of the situation. And it sucks that real life is not like Madden. Because in a perfect world, similar to when we were talking about, like, back when we were talking about trading Baker, it's like, hey, can you keep Baker on this roster? No, you can't. Like, it's going to cause issues. And it's not that Flacco is going to cause a problem. It's not that Deshaun Watson's going to cause a problem. I think at the end of the day, you risk the locker room, you risk the fan base having issues, which we all have issues regardless, but even more issues, than if both of these guys are on this team. For me personally, I'm completely okay having a good relationship with Joe Flacco and be like, hey, you want to come back? But it was reported by Mary Kay that Flacco might end up getting close to Jacoby Brissett money from last year. We're not paying that. We're not going to pay that. I don't think we need to. I think DTR is just fine. I think he was forced into some horrible, horrible situations. That's a kid that I think could continue his development and become a really good quarterback in the NFL. I think he could become possibly a starting quarterback somewhere in the NFL. Probably not Cleveland, but it's kind of similar to like the Tyler Huntley situation in Baltimore. Like, Tyler Huntley was very good. Came in for Lamar, won games. I think that's what we can have with DTR. I don't see a need personally to sign a backup. And as much as I love Joe Flacco, as much as I appreciate Joe Flacco, I really think it causes more issues, then it helps. So I know there's going to be a portion of the fan base that'll be like, what are you talking about, dude? Flacco's the last good quarterback we had. I don't give a flying fuck. You can kiss my ass. Like, Joe Flacco was great. He's not your future quarterback. Sorry for cussing, but he's not your future quarterback. Nope. Deshaun Watson is. Sorry.
I agree. Yep. Cleveland Browns need to find their fit. We all need to find our fit. And in the 216, there's TwoOneFits. So head over to TwoOneFits.com, find your fit. The owner of TwoOneFits, great guy, makes some great merch. Check it out. Again, find your fit, rep your teams. There's Lake Erie merch. Rep the lake, rep the city. It's not all just about the Browns, Cavs, Guardians. Rep the city of Cleveland. Be proud to be from Cleveland.
You can get your DF Sports merch.
2OneFits. Yes, DF Sports merch. Find your fit at 2OneFits.
There you go. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add on the Flacco Watson stuff?
No, that's kind of why I went into the ad break.
No, my bad. Look at me selling here at the end. Let's get into the most important segment of the show.
The Honky of the Week award.
The Honky of the Week.
Presented by Dawg Pound Discussions. Now, Derek, who is our first Honky of the Week award winner?
So, I know you're all waiting. I know you have waited weeks anticipating for this podcast to be released to find out who is the first ever Honky of the Week. And ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to wait another second. Yes, you do. Pause. There was a second. Because your Honky of the Week this week, the man who is changing the position at the NFL level, a man who anybody, any scout, any team would look at and say, you can't play that position. A man who played at a school surrounded by cornfields, who is going to be a first-round draft pick, Cooper DeJean. Honky of the Week number 1.
Congratulations, Cooper DeJean, University of Iowa, cornerback. Can't wait to watch you ball out in the NFL.
Yep, and speaking of balling out in the NFL Combine.
Yep, you're probably tired of hearing us talk, so let's wrap up our episode with a nice little next week. We're going to have an NFL Combine review. It's popping out in Indy right now, combined all weekend. We're going to get a lot of insight on the draft prospects. And we will be back here next week with a full breakdown of who we think the Cleveland Browns should draft, who we think the Cleveland Browns should stay away from, surprises, disappointments, Derek's father. Can't wait until the episode next week to talk all about the NFL Combine. That's it for us. Signing out. That's how Derek chooses to sign out this week. Go Browns.